Hey, it's your favorite president, and I approve this message because she's going down in 11 days.
You may have noticed recently a number of high-profile Hollywood celebrities endorsing me.
I'm white, I'm a dude, and I'm for Harris.
I'm supporting Kamala Harris for president and Tim Walz for vice president.
Vote for Kamala. I need to get out and start campaigning for Kamala Harris for president.
And you may have also noticed that these endorsements have all come around the same time as P. Diddy's indictment for some pretty heinous crimes. In fact, in the office, we like to call these supporters friends of Diddy.
Just been unsealed. Combs is being charged with racketeering conspiracy, alleging he ran an enterprise that he engaged in sex trafficking, forced labor, or kidnapping, arson, and other crimes. He's also charged with sex trafficking by force.
Well, let me put the rumors to rest. These celebrity endorsements have been in no way coerced whatsoever. The deep state is not blackmailing Hollywood celebrities into enthusiastically endorsing me for president. That would be ridiculous.
I'm just so appreciative of Kamala.
I've always been a fan of Kamala.
Kind of going from a stop Trump mode into a go Kamala mode.
Beautiful, wonderful Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris!
These celebrities simply recognize the amazing job the Biden-Harris administration has done over the past 4 years, and they want 4 more years of the same.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact. And if you're not convinced by these amazing people who have definitely not been blackmailed, listen to the man, P. Diddy himself.
The #1 priority is to get Trump out of office, and that violence has to be an option. I started in 2004 with Vote or Die, and this is the evolution of that thought.
Vote or die, motherfucker, vote or die. Get out there and vote or I will motherfucking kill you.
That's definitely not a threat. Seriously, though, vote or die.
You ever wonder what they'd say if I was the one saying that? And live from Times Square, it's That Kevin Show.
Somewhere in the bowels of the city that never sleeps,
Kevin McCullough, radio host with Salem Media,
is a man also not sleeping.
Syndicated radio talk show host Kevin McCullough.
And that guy would like a word with you.
Many of you know him as Vostradamus.
Of course that Kevin Show is going to be great. The only thing that could be greater, of course, would be That Donald Show. We don't have that, so we have That Kevin Show.
Featuring the music of Dick Tunney and the Dream in Color Orchestra. Straight ahead, Decision 24 updates from Hilton Beckham and May Mailman. Sketch comedy tonight from Not a Parent, The Babylon Bee, Ken Holderness, and John P. Crist. And in the spotlight, Cody Johnson and Carrie Underwood with their brand new hit. From Times Square, the true foreign operative who attempted to hack President Trump's cell phone. Here's that
All right, kids, welcome aboard. Glad you're with us for the weekend. I did not try to hack President Trump's cell phone, but there were some people doing that. And it kind of became a common theme when you ask some of the people why they got involved in some of the stuff they did this week, especially if it seemed to benefit one Kamala Harris, because the answer was kind of like, I don't know, she's bottoming out. Does she have any other options? What is she supposed to do? How's she supposed to win? That's kind of the big explanation on everything. I'm unsure about it anyway. Hey, did you see the nice snazzy That Kevin Show? This can be yours. This snazzy mug can be yours. We have a copy of one just like it, or a black one with white and red lettering. This is white with the black and red and white lettering. That's good stuff. All right. But we're drawing a winner every week between now and the end of the year. And this week's winner is from 29 Palms, California. My bride's from California. I've never heard of 29 Palms. I'm going to assume it's a real place. Debbie Martin, who used to watch us over the air on BizTV. And then she moved to an area where BizTV is no longer on the air. Now, Debbie, if you really liked us on BizTV, you can still watch us on BizTV. They're online at biztv.com. So you can always still watch us there. But if you don't want to watch on your computer, you can also get us on Salem News Channel, which is now over the air in 50 different markets. We're on Pluto TV. We launched on Samsung Plus TV this week. Millions of viewers on Pluto and Samsung Plus, and we're constantly coming to new places as well. So thank you for those of you who try to watch us. For those of you who listen to us on some 300 plus radio stations across the country, couldn't be happier than to have you with us as well. And if you want a chance to win a mug for yourself, just send us an email, thatkevinshow@gmail.com. Put mug in the subject line, put your choice of the white mug with the red letters or the black mug with the white letters, whatever, and then give us your mailing address so we can send it to you when we draw your name. All right. Thatkevinshow@gmail.com will get us there. Thatkevinshow@gmail.com. And to all of you watching from new places, Pluto TV, Samsung Plus TV, all the different places that get us, thank you for having us in your home tonight. Now, I want to get to a very important aspect of the race for president as we close out the campaign here. And you need to understand what's happening, because over the next 10, 11 days, you're going to be bombarded with every kind of crazy theory, concept, argument that you can possibly imagine. How do you know? Because they're making them in public. Kamala Harris is saying that Trump is a Nazi fascist. And she's saying this because General John Kelly said that he acted like a fascist. And if you talk to General John Kelly, he'll say, well, I wrote it in my book, which he did. But if you then talk to the person involved with the circumstances under which this accusation came about, it has to do with a man by the name of Corey Lewandowski being allowed to go see the president when John Kelly was the chief of staff for the White House. And John Kelly throws little Corey Lewandowski, who's surprisingly spry and strong for the tiny man that he is. But General Kelly thought he was a big, bad dude, threw him up against the wall and said, nobody gets to the president without me. And Corey Lewandowski said, no, I am the president's friend, and I helped him get elected, and I'm still advising him, and he's asked me to come see him. Evidently, this little tete-a-tete didn't go in the direction of John Kelly when he was in the White House, so he wrote in his book, Trump's a fascist. And now Kamala Harris is running around after 2 assassination attempts have been executed against the president. Now that there's been a 3rd man arrested, she's running around saying, Trump's a fascist. I'm going to say it as much as I want to. Well, this week, Mitch McConnell and Mike Johnson, other Senate and House leadership, sent a letter to the sitting vice president and said this is irresponsible. And it is, in fact, kind of your way of opening up, hunting season on the president. Now, this is important. Why? This is important because this was the woman that stood in that convention in Chicago and told us she was going to be all about the joy, that she wasn't going to politic with darkness and meanness and anger and negativity. She was going to be about the joy. And now she's about as joyful as Hillary Clinton. He's a Marxist. He's a fascist. He's a Nazi. Meanwhile, what's President Trump doing? Well, he went to McDonald's and he worked the shift with all the regular people, and he smiled and had a good time doing it. And he's been all over her states. He's been campaigning in blue meccas: Philadelphia, New York, Detroit, California, all the places where the Democrats are supposedly doing just fine and should win by big margins. I just saw a guy on Instagram just before we went to air. Funny looking fella in Florida. And he goes, I got a prediction. I'm going to tell you right now. Kamala Harris is going to have a big blue wave on election night. She's going to start by flipping Florida. Flipping Florida, where Donald Trump's ahead? In one of the biggest margins of any of the states that are out there? She's having trouble holding on to Pennsylvania. She's having trouble trying to build a blue wall in the Midwest. She's having trouble just keeping her areas intact. And the LA Times wouldn't endorse her, and the Washington Post wouldn't endorse her, and none of the liberal newspapers would endorse. Why? How big of a disaster is she? Anyway. All right, we got a lot to get to about Decision 24 tonight, plus sketch comedy, and in the spotlight, Carrie Underwood and Cody Johnson. Stick around.
Back to that Kevin show with Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square. Kevin McCullough, very glad to have you with us. And we are getting ever closer to the end of this cycle. I know, in your head, this presidential campaign has lasted about 4,293 million years. But I promise you, we are in the final stretch, and it's not going to be that much longer. And we're going to have, I'm predicting this, I'm telling people, shh, don't tell anybody else, it's a secret. America is going to have a big night on election night, mostly because you're doing the hard work and going out and getting the votes now. You're banking your votes in Arizona. You're banking your votes in the places where it needs. They're not going to be able to say, oh, well, we had a printer go out of operation in, the biggest Republican county in Phoenix. No, that's not going to happen this time. We're going to be on top of it. Anyway, along those lines, down the stretch, you've now seen both candidates appear on podcasts. And you even got Kamala Harris to sit down with Fox News. Nobody thought that was going to happen. And here to discuss some of the closing round arguments from the two sides is Hilton Beckham. She is the Director of Communications for the America First Policy Institute. I love these guys. I've loved them from day one that they were founded. They became one of my favorite go-to think tanks, mostly because, Hilton, let me just say, you're not confused about who you are as an organization. When, certain colleges and certain longtime standing think tanks in D.C. that I've had great relationships with and worked very well with, but when they put people in their ranks that say, you know what, we just can't tell a difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, so because we don't have a personality grudge against Kamala Harris, we're going to tell people to vote for her. I'm sorry, you lose my respect at that point. We're in the middle of a cultural battle, and you got to decide which side you're on, and then you got to fight for that. So you got to actually wear the uniform for your team. You guys never seem to be confused about that, so thank you.
No, we are never, ever confused. Thank you for saying that. We are always America first, and we know right now it's really not, Democrat versus Republican. It's really just good versus evil, and we want to be on good side and pushing that gospel message out.
I have a hard time understanding how people that served in Republican administrations and longtime, conservative icons in the conservative movement can say that voting for Kamala Harris is okay in this go around. Have they not paid attention to any of her policies? I mean, this is why the Bret Baier interview was so critical. That we finally got, after all the things that she had done, where it was like softball after, you finally got a journalist that said, but 3.5 years, you've been there 3.5 years. Overall, how do you think she's ending her, all of 100-day campaign that she's going to have run, not having received any primary votes or anything else, but she's going to close this thing out here. How would you perceive that she's done?
No, it's, truly historic. I always want to remind people back before she became the presidential nominee through 0 votes, like you just said, I remember when the far left media would ask Nancy Pelosi would ask Democrats, hey, do you think Joe Biden should keep Kamala on the ticket? She was that unpopular, and Democrats couldn't give a straight answer for it. So the fact that she went from that to where she is now, where she is the presidential nominee, and the far left media is literally trying to drag this woman across the finish line. You could just see it in all of their reporting. But no, it's truly remarkable. And I think that's something that was kind of interesting that Donald Trump pointed on in the Univision town hall when they said, hey, can you name something good about Kamala? And he was like, she's a survivor for sure. I don't know how she got to where she is, but she did. I mean, that is one thing about Kamala that we can all agree on. But I don't know about you, Kevin. You tell me if I'm wrong. We're all saying it's a tight race. It is. But part of me, I'm not super worried. There's just something in the air that she just doesn't have the energy. I think we see it with Barack Obama and everyone.
My very, elite thinking columns on Sundays at townhall.com, because over the last 3 weeks, what I've done is I've tried to summarize what happens during that week that continues to deplete momentum from her ranks and has given it to Donald Trump. But if you look at all of the indicators, and I got to put a parenthesis on this was true in 2020 as well. If you looked at all the outlying factors, all the indicators that people would normally look at, Donald Trump was set up, he was poised to not only win big, but add to the number of voters that he got in his first term, which has never been done in the modern era. He got that part of the equation. He got 14 million more votes in his second election than he did in his first. But because of the funny COVID business where they had mailed a ballot to anything that had a pulse and a lot of things that didn't, you ended up having a lot of ballots, a lot of ballot standards that were legally changed. So the media thinks it has a straight face when it says they didn't cheat. It was the most honest election ever. Well, it was only the most honest election ever because you changed all the rules as to how you were going to count everything. But if you had in Nevada, for example, you could take a black marker and just make a X for your signature on the ballot, and that would match your signature that was on record, even though it looked nothing like it. Yeah, you could get a few more votes in there. Here's the thing, and this is why you're feeling what you're feeling. You've got back to normal or mostly normal rules for most of the states that had the COVID protocols. You've got increased Republican registration, and you still got that Trump base that's going to turn out, and don't tell anybody this, more votes than he got in his second election, which is more than he got in his first election. He's going to catapult himself to another level of incumbency with this, because it's going to be the most votes that any incumbent who should have been the incumbent has ever gotten. And that's why I think you're feeling that way. And I think if you kind of like get a sense of where the country is at, you're getting that feeling as well. I just sense that there's, even here in New York, there's just a sense that Donald Trump's going to win this election.
Yeah. I know there is a softening happening in New York and California. I'm not saying he's going to win it, but I love that he's going to those states and talking to people there. I think those two states especially got hit so hard with illegal immigration. The fact that we had liberal leaders in those states calling out, Chicago and New York City, they were calling out to the Biden administration saying, what is going on? You have to stop this flood of illegals. I went up and interviewed people, citizens or community members in New York City asking, what do you think about all these illegals that are here? They were liberal and they were like, I don't know what's going on. Are they being vetted? What's happening? They weren't happy about it. And a lot of people didn't even want to be put on camera because they were so upset and they didn't want their face out there, and they're scared to speak out about it. So I think there's a real softening that's happening. And also too, I don't know if you feel this way, part of me is starting to think that, how Kamala always starts telling all these stories when she talks, and it's because she doesn't have an actual answer to the question that's being asked. I think story time Kamala is putting voters to sleep, to be honest. And they're just like not energized to go to the voting polls, because it's just like no one even knows what you're talking about. They kind of tune out when you talk. Your base, of course, you're going to have the crazy far left people who are going to vote for Kamala no matter what. But the people that she's supposed to really bring over to her side, you're putting them to sleep with all these story times and with all the same things we've heard over and over again. And you're not, shifting the needle over to your side at all with all of these soliloquies that you keep giving.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about some of the unique ways this election cycle has changed, and I think maybe in kind of a permanent direction. We'll do that more with Hilton Beckham when we come right back. She's with the American First Policy Institute. I'm Kevin McCullough. We're live from Times Square.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. From New York, That Kevin McCullough.
It's That Kevin Show, oddly, because I'm called That Kevin. Glad you're with us, live from Times Square. Hilton Beckham is back with us. She's with the America First Policy Institute. And if you don't know about AFPI, they are just fighting the fight for common sense. They're just fighting the fight to have common sense, rational, conservative policy lead the way on how the country goes. And Hilton, my tease before we went to the break was this election cycle has changed. I think the parties have changed, and it's largely been because of the America First movement, which didn't start with Donald Trump. He may have kind of coined the phrase "Make America Great Again." But if you really think about it, it's the evolution of what the Tea Party movement kind of became. It was when these people got back to founding principles and saying, what is our country really supposed to be about? And they saw government continually trying to interfere with their basic rights and take away their basic privileges. And you were talking about Kamala's soliloquies before we went to break. I want to harken back to her interview with Bret Baier. She has done the same thing, not just to audiences, but to interviewers. And she gets mad at them. She got mad at Bret Baier, but she got mad at the guy from 60 Minutes, whose name I'm forgetting, who did a great job in actually asking her, holding her feet to the fire on some of the issues. Now, CBS went and edited the hooey out of that thing, so it didn't really resemble what he got. But Whitaker, he at least asked the questions that she needed to answer. But she does. She starts on this, and SNL did a sketch on it. What do you keep in your glove box of your car? Well, Steve, when I was growing up, I was in a middle-class household. Yeah, I get the idea of marketing and getting your message out. But this has been a campaign in which American voters are looking for real solutions to actual problems. And on that front, let me have you rate the comparison of their programs, because this is now what she's starting to tout. She's starting to say, well, all these editorial pages have said my programs are going to be better than his programs. You're in this world every day like I am. Can you tell me what her programs are to get the economy fixed?
No, and that's the problem, is that I'm starting to think I'm crazy because I'll, talk about this in these interviews or study it. And I'm like, why do I not have a grasp of what she wants to do for the economy? I just you can't put your mind around it. And we're talking about, the interview she did with Bret Baier. I think it's almost hilarious that these questions that we all know are coming, about the border, about the economy, about President Biden's mental acuity. She gets asked these questions and she acts like she's been ambushed. You can see it in her face. She's like deer in headlights and she's almost shocked. She was shocked on CBS to be asked these questions. It is your job to know that it's almost softball questions because, again, we all know they're coming. It is shocking that she just acts like she shouldn't be asked something like this, or that it's out of left field. And she almost acts like it's a gotcha interview, and it's not. And then also, she never finishes the sentence. She's asked these questions, and I think she almost got there with the Bret Baier interview when she said, I'm not going to be a continuation of the Biden administration, and then just stopped. There was no follow through. It wasn't explaining who she was. It wasn't distinguishing who she was as a candidate. She just always falls short. And I truly believe it's because she does not want it on record of what she plans to do in the administration, just in case she decides to flip-flop again. She doesn't want any footprints left that people can point to and say, hey, you said you were going to do this, but you're actually doing this. So I don't know. And maybe it's a stellar move on her part.
She's been burned by her past positions on things, certainly in this election cycle. Last minute together with Hilton Beckham, I just want to ask you a couple of questions. You're a young professional woman. Women have been the focus of both campaigns in the closing weeks. She wants America to swim in baby's blood. I've never seen anybody be more pro-abortion, just unapologetically. We want to kill as many babies as we can. I've never seen this from a candidate as aggressive as her about this. But Donald Trump has countered that with, I'm going to keep boys out of your daughter's locker rooms. We're going to go back to girls competing against girls in the field of play. And we're going to protect the women of this country. Not from your personal policy beliefs. I know what those are, but in terms of how you see them resonating with women across the country, what has been your impression of the two strategies of the candidates?
I think Donald Trump has a very good strategy, and also JD Vance. JD Vance actually surprised me a lot during his debate when he personalized it. When he first talked about growing up with women who had abortions and they felt like it was the only option, and that they were young teenagers and whatnot.
Which is why I think the protecting your daughter's strategy by the Trump team is so vital, because it's one thing to talk about babies that may or may not be born at some point in the future. It's another thing to reach out to moms and say, I care about your daughters where they are now.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. From New York, That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back. Kevin McCullough, glad to have you with us. That Kevin Show. I want to say thank you to those of you that over the last number of weeks have been praying for the victims of Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. My friends at Samaritan Purse on the ground doing great work. And for those of you that have given gifts to that, it has meant a lot to know that we've been able to make a tangible difference in some of the immediate aftermath. And I want to go to the other cause that we have been championing all year, and that is these 208 women that are still in slavery in northern Sudan. To date, and I just want to give you an update, we have seen 145 of those women be liberated because of your generosity, because of the opportunity to go into the north with retrievers and find them and negotiate and get them out, and to be able to do so peacefully is a really remarkable thing. So thank you to those of you that have been a big part of that operation already. But I also want to say that 145 from 208 means that there are 63 women that we have not helped yet. And those 63 are it's going to bother me until we get them liberated. That means that every night that you and I go to bed peacefully in the beds that we are grateful to have, and especially for those of us that weren't in the path of the hurricanes, we have a lot to be thankful for. But these women don't. And even to some degree, their circumstances are more dire than some of the families and stuff that we've witnessed on our television set. I know that's hard to imagine, but if you are ritualistically abused, if you are repeatedly raped, if you are constantly dragged verbally, emotionally, physically, every single day, if you're constantly being beaten by someone who says that they own you, it's just an existence that I don't have any fathom of an idea as to how the women that we are helping to liberate out of North Sudan have actually survived this for the number of years that they've been in. And for many of them, because they were taken as young girls during the Sudanese Civil War, they've been in it for all of their consciously adult life. So they may have been in slavery for 15, 20, even 25 years for some of them on the older end. So imagine the joy that takes root in their heart when they hear that there's going to be a possibility of being liberated, and not just being liberated, but then getting to go back home, to go find family that in some cases still exist, to go back to regions where they knew other families and friends that were, dispersed at the time of the Civil War, but that have come back together. And imagine this: if you have gone through all of that horrible abuse, ritualistic rape, sexual assault, mutilating female genitals, doing things that are just dehumanizing, not even giving them, proper food and so forth on a daily basis, sometimes making them go several days in between proper meals. The level of frustration and anger and depression and sadness that your life is never going to be more than that has to be overwhelming. And that's why one of the reasons why I'm so glad that the Christian Solidarity International, the group that we were working with to get them out, has right on the border, when they cross over into South Sudan, this recovery camp where they're able to go and just rest and eat and think and feel and tell their story and be heard and be seen for the first time. We don't have any deficits of those areas of our lives as people in the West. Every one of us wake up, we go to the pantry, we pour ourselves a bowl of cereal of whatever we want or could afford that week. We live our life with so much freedom and independence and self-determination. And that's been something that these women have been robbed of since they were young girls. Even control over their own body. Even control over their own faith. They're told that they have to abandon whatever Christian belief they have to become a good Muslim. That's why they mutilate their genitals, because they say you have to become a good Muslim. And a Muslim wife, in that culture cannot have any pleasure from the sexual act. It's heinous. It's awful. And yet, as we are able to one by one retrieve those slaves and bring them home, the joy that is filling their heart overcomes that darkness, overcomes the depression. So you've heard me talk about it a lot throughout the year. We have 63 specific women. We know where they are. We know their names. We've already engaged conversation with how to get them out. We just need you to help provide what's called the bag of hope for when they get back to South Sudan. And here's what's in it. Enough grain to feed them for a year. Sorghum is what they eat. Enough seed to plant another year's worth of sorghum to grow. So you're going to feed them for the coming year. You're going to feed them for the year following that, and they will harvest seed from that crop to grow more crops. So you got food taken care of, at least on a somewhat permanent basis. They're going to have tarps, tents, blankets, other things to help protect them from the weather. They are going to be given utilitarian kits to help garden, to help fish, to help clean with. They are going to be given a Bible in their language. Many of them, that will be the only book they will ever own, but they desperately want it. They will be given a number of things that they need, feminine products, helps in terms of clothes and other things. But then there's this really fun little part of this, and that is that they get a little she-goat that can bear them more goats. They can make milk and cheese and other food products, obviously, from the milk. But beyond that, they can start a little micro enterprise for themselves and sell the baby she-goats to other farmers and to other people that need it, and by that be able to support them and the children that they hope to have. In some instances, we're even being able to bring home some of the slave children that they've had while in captivity to be with them. So this is an amazing gift that you're giving them in the bag of hope. That's all in the bag of hope, $250 one-time gift. If you have to break it up over a couple of months to pay for it, that's fine as well. Here's where you go. 888-342-1010, 888-342-1010, or bringherhome.org. Bringherhome.org. Just jump on there online, give your gift, and then by tomorrow, they're going to be able to process that and be able to speak for one more woman being freed and get her lined up for the next liberation. 888-342-1010, 888-342-1010, or bringherhome.org.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.
Ah, yes, it's that favorite time of year. Football and elections.
What a great game. Oh, commercial.
Well, for those of you in the swing states, we do apologize, but you gotta go vote. And now from Times Square, it's That Kevin Show.
somewhere in the bowels of the city that never sleeps,
Kevin McCullough, radio host with Salem Media,
is a man also not sleeping.
Syndicated radio talk show host Kevin McCullough.
And that guy would like a word with you.
Many of you know him from Nostradamus.
Of course that Kevin show is going to be great. The only thing that could be greater, of course, would be that Donald show. We don't have that, so we have that Kevin show.
Featuring the music of Dick Tunney and the Dream in Color Orchestra. Still to come, May Mailman of the Independent Women's Forum and Decision 24. Sketch comedy from the Babylon Bee, John B. Crist, and Penn Holderness. And Cody Johnson returns to the spotlight. And now, from Times Square, the only human voted most likely to be voted president of his local union of pizza rats, here's the
Thank you, Dave. Welcome. We've got a big show for you. Hey, did you see this follow-up? Remember last week when Kamala Harris told those Christian students that they weren't welcome at her rallies? And they said, Jesus is Lord, and she's like, you're at the wrong rally. She was changing her tune on CNN with Anderson Cooper. She was like, I pray at least once a day. I get real crazy. I pray twice a day. Oh, when is this all going to stop? Let's get to the news. For Assignment Desk Weekend, I'm Kevin McCullough. Leaders in both chambers of Congress sent a letter to Kamala Harris this week demanding that she stop referring to her opponent as a fascist in her campaign rhetoric. Mitch McConnell and Mike Johnson reminded the sitting VP of how irresponsible it is to inflame the less than sound members of society in this high-stakes election. They reminded her that there have been assassins arrested in 3 separate connections to recent attempts on the life of Donald Trump. After cackling nervously, the sitting vice president then rebuffed the congressional leaders by rebuking, "But it's all I got. How do you propose I win?" Donald Trump is responding to a judge's order that requires non-citizens to be left on Virginia's voting rolls for the 11-5 election. Assignment Desk Weekend would like to point out that it is a federal crime for a non-citizen to vote in federal elections. Yet, shockingly, a federal judge is mandating that non-citizens be allowed to vote. Trump calling the decision unconstitutional and illegal. When asked for the rationale of the judge in the ruling, the judge's only remark was, "But it's all she's got. How is she supposed to win?" In Pennsylvania, a batch of 2,500 early ballots have been flagged for potential fraud. The forms were flagged for a variety of reasons, like false names, duplicative handwriting, incorrect information related to the identification of the person signing it. The Lancaster, Pennsylvania officials expressed shock and disbelief at the possibility of such fraud. When asked why the forms were allowed to be processed to begin with, senior Pennsylvania Democrat officials told Assignment Desk Weekend off the record, "But it's all she's got. How's she supposed to win?" Foreign hackers have reportedly attempted to breach the data of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance's cell phones this week. The hackers, obviously for nefarious reasons, wish to see the information uncovered and use it to assist in the election of Kamala Harris. When reached by Assignment Desk Weekend as to their motives, they replied, "But it's all she's got. How's she supposed to win?" Robert Kagan, editor-at-large for The Washington Post, resigned this week when the paper decided not to issue a formal endorsement for president in the race of 2024. This on the heels of the LA Times decision to follow suit. When reached by Assignment Desk Weekend, Kagan's spokespeople explained that key endorsements from radically woke publications has been a long-standing strategy of the Harris campaign and that they had embraced it. And should they decide not to endorse, they replied, but it's all she's got. How's she supposed to win? And finally, in what feels like a crazy game of full circle, Kamala Harris has decided to continue to label her opponent as a fascist. When asked why, she simply replied to Assignment Desk Weekend, well, I grew up in a middle-class household. Before she added, but it's all I've got. How am I supposed to win? For Assignment Desk Weekend, I'm Kevin McCullough.
Donald J. Trump. He's an existential threat to democracy itself. If we don't destroy him, the unparalleled peace and prosperity Biden brought to America will be over. For good. But there's still time to stop Trump before it's too late. Here's a few ways to destroy Donald Trump. First off, impeach him for the third time. It's bound to work. Number 2, bribe Melania to reveal the source of his strength. It's gotta be his hair. Number 3, put a Big Mac right underneath a dangling piano. You didn't hear it from me, but Hillary Clinton has successfully used this method 3 times before. Effective and hilarious. Number 4, become a porn star, have an affair with him, and get him to pay you hush money through a shady arrangement. I think somebody already tried that before. No, scratch that. Okay, here's a really good one. Outlaw tanning beds, and then nuke the sun like in The Matrix so he can't have such a glorious tan. His supporters will abandon him by the thousands. Send the FBI to raid Mar-a-Lago again. 3rd time's a charm. Ooh, send him on a hunting trip with Dick Cheney. Diabolical. Next up, start World War III and hope one of the Russian bombs hits Mar-a-Lago. The current administration is working on this one right now. Okay, how about this? Catch him in the act of drinking a Bud Light. Political career over. And finally, destroy democracy itself. You see, if a democracy elects Trump, then we have to destroy democracy to save democracy. It's complicated. All right, guys, that's the best I got. Then we can link arms and destroy them together.
And were you better off under Trump's economy?
Yeah. Thank you. I love you too.
4 years ago, you could give us half the price. It's nuts. I was better off 4 years ago than now.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
How would I put it? The money stretched a little bit further.
This is inflation. This is TikTok. This is TikTok. This is inflation. This is what's happened.
Everything is high. Everything is high.
The cost of living in America is still just too high. Is the price of groceries still too high? Yes. Groceries are still too high. Everyday things like groceries are still too high.
Chicken used to be the cheapest thing you could buy. Now it's the highest thing.
Chicken is way up.
Gas prices are high. Groceries are extremely high.
The American dream right now is really elusive for far too many people.
Put a businessman in office, you tend to do a little bit better.
Hate him or love him, he was good with the economy.
The greatest economy in the history of the world, which is what we gave you before.
Safe to say you're voting for Trump?
Yeah, and I'm a Democrat. Once he left, everything shot up. I don't know what happened, but you can bring him back.
Please.
Kamala, you're fired. Get out of here. You're fired. Get the hell out of here.
Come Halloween shopping with me at Hobby Lobby. Let's go. Well, celebrating Halloween, are you? Well, if it isn't the devil incarnate himself. What? We don't celebrate Halloween here because we are a Christian company. Fall decor, party, floral, and crafts. Do you see anything about the Halloween in there? No, you don't. This is not the devil's workshop. Oh, I bet you think this says Happy Halloween. Yeah, well, it doesn't. It says Happy Harvest. Read your Bible. Here at Hobby Lobby, we are blessed, okay? You want to be cursed? Go to Spirit Halloween. Worship the Lord or worship the devil. Can't serve two masters. This is a ladder, and if you're in here shopping for Halloween decor, you're gonna need a couple of these. That's your only way you're getting to heaven. Fall is proof that change is beautiful. It's the New Testament. This is one of my favorites here. It says, "Come gather at our table." And on the back, it says, "Unless you're a Democrat." This aisle right here is actually where we used to have our costumes. Yeah, but last year somebody dressed up as a sexy pilgrim. I talked to corporate. We got that shut down.
Ready or not, we'll be right back. That Kevin. Now, back to That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square. It's Kevin McCullough, That Kevin Show. Certainly glad to have you with us. And of course, coming up yet at the end of the hour, it will be the New Music Spotlight with the Artist of the Week this week. Looking forward to that. But we want to delve into another issue-oriented discussion here. And May Mailman is with us from the Independent Women's Forum. She's the director of the Law Center there at IWF. And IWF, if you've listened to my radio show or watched my TV shows, you know that we are huge fans of all things that they are doing. May, it's good to have you for the first time. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kevin.
We worked really hard to get you on an originally titled show name. So That Kevin Show. But when it comes to original names, I've never known a mailman before. So we're in good company today. We were joking off air a little bit, but we live in very tenuous times. And these cases that are going before the Supreme Court in this era are more important than ever before. And I guess before we get into some specifics, you know, one of the things that Kamala Harris has tried to use against President Trump, and President Trump has tried to use as kind of a calling card, is his record on judges, 300 plus in his time in the White House, including 3 Supreme Court justices. And judicial philosophy counts for something, doesn't it?
It does, because you're not always going to agree with what the Supreme Court says or does, and you shouldn't. If you agree every single time, then you know that they're not doing their jobs, because that would mean that you agree with everything Congress has done. You agree with every single law that has been passed. And so judicial philosophy means, how does a judge approach judging? Are they just doing what they feel like? Or are they reading the statute and doing what Congress, what the people have said to do?
Yeah.
And what Trump promised to do is that he would put originalist, textualist judges on not just the Supreme Court, but throughout the country. And, you know, that might not always make people happy, because that means that they're not always going to do what they want to do. But that should actually make all of us very happy, because it means if we don't like what they do, we can change it. That's on us. That's on us creating a law. And that's a big burden. That means that we have to pay attention to what's going on. But those are the types of judges that Trump has been focused on. And I think they've done our country a lot of good.
There's been a lot of discussion from the Harris side of the equation about court packing. And I think one remedy that she would try to seek if she had the opportunity is to expand the Supreme Court. I've heard various numbers of how many justices should be on the court. It hasn't always been 9, and there have been times when we've had to decide cases with less in between appointments of those that are on the court currently. What's the governing rule on how the makeup of the court gets changed?
Well, I think consistency. Right now there is 9 works, you know, it's been long standing, and consistency brings with it trust. You know, if things are always changing, sometimes it's 15, sometimes it's 20, sometimes it's 3. Why would you trust any ruling coming out of a body that didn't have consistency? And because 9, you know, at the beginning of the country, or, you know, 100 years ago, if that number were going to be 13, then sure, the number's 13. But at this point, especially when our nation is so divided, consistency is key. And that's what's so dangerous, because if Kamala Harris adds 5, just enough to make sure that she's got a majority, then the next conservative is going to come in and they're going to put on 7.
Right.
And the next person, or maybe they'll start kicking people out. They'll change the Constitution and say it's no longer life tenure, whatever it is. But right now, consistency is the need.
Well, and I don't quite understand how the appeals courts and the circuit courts get established and maintained. But you look at the court that has the most number of judges on it in the circuit level, the appellate level, and it's the most overturned, which is the Ninth Circuit, way up in the Northwest. They've had so many bad rulings that have eventually gone to the Supreme Court and been overturned. It seems to me that sometimes too many cooks in the kitchen is just a bad idea. That could just be me being a little too colloquial. Probably for the smart people. That's fine. I'm not afraid of being called names. We want to talk about one of the cases that is going before the United States Supreme Court, and people may not know it by name, but they're certainly familiar with the concept of what's being argued, because the Biden administration came into office and almost immediately blackmailed the public school systems across the country to say, you're going to provide gender affirming care. You're going to do this for minors. We're going to do everything we can to even avoid parental accountability to the school system as you're doing it. And if you don't, we're going to take the school lunch programs out of your schools that the feds pay for. It really was a bullying tactic by the executive branch in a way that I think if it was about anything else, people would have been up in arms. But people didn't know how to respond to this. But this is starting to get through the courts now in terms of some need for rational accountability and some thoughts on all this. And this case, United States versus Scrimeti, for my listeners and viewers, just explain what it's about and where it stands.
Yeah. So I think that this upcoming Supreme Court term is actually not super exciting, but this is the big case. This is the big cultural case that's going to affect people's lives. And here's why. So Tennessee, like a lot of states, says that minors who can't get tattoos without parental permission or can't get tattoos, period, that minors do not have access to sex trait modification procedures. Some people call it gender affirming care. No. These are sex trait modification procedures where you are cutting off your genitals, where you're sterilizing yourself.
And I want people to hear that clearly. Sex trait modification. This is fancy language now for removing little girls' breasts and changing genitals. It's top and bottom surgery referred to in some of the situations. But it always, it's funny how they try to couch it in like descriptive, language that doesn't quite tell you what it is. But this is a bad thing.
Exactly. I mean, this is kids whose brains are not fully developed trying to assert that they know what they want to be, that what body parts they want to have when they're adults. You're sterilizing children. So Tennessee rightly says you have to at least wait until you're 18. Okay. If you want to make a massive decision like that, that could create depression, suicidality, all of this for a lifetime. No, you're going to have to wait until you're 18. This is beyond a reasonable law. And that's usually what, but of course, they get sued. And the basis for the lawsuit was in part that it's unconstitutional, that the Constitution, when our founders created our United States Constitution, that they created you must allow minors to cut off their genitals. What? So what the argument is that under our Constitution, you can't discriminate on the basis of sex. You can't say, men, you can drink at age 16, but women, you've got to wait until age 18. You can't discriminate on the basis of sex. Okay. And so they say that this law discriminates on the basis of sex because there will be some instances where girls can have access to estrogen if they need it, okay, for medical reasons, but boys would not be able to have access to estrogen if they just want to become girls.
So it's removing all distinctions between the two sexes, and that's what
completely.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. Here he is, McCullough.
To Times Square, Kevin McCullough, glad to have you with us. Honored to have May Mailman, who is the director of the Independent Women's Law Center. She just heads up all of the stuff they deal with in the legal arena and in terms of public policy. And she's helping explain this United States versus Scrimeti case that is going to go to the court in this next session. And if you don't think courts matter, this case is a good example of one that could, because, May, sadly, the justices that Biden and Obama put on the court have been reliable, what they would call progressive votes against constitutionality, originalist, textualist type of understanding of the Constitution. And thankfully, the justices that President Trump put on have been faithful to that, at least for the majority of that. So hopefully we'll get some more common sense out of the court here. But what we're talking about here, and I need your legal insight on this. It's kind of a phony argument, because the idea that someone is being discriminated against because of sexual differences, when a drug is primarily used for the benefit of women for legitimate medical reasons, and it is not, I mean, there's not even consensus in medical arenas that surgeries and puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones are good for children. You can't find medical agreement across that spectrum. Why should politics or courts or anybody else be weighing in on this?
Exactly. So the left's argument here is dangerous in a few ways, because one, these sorts of laws are not discriminating on the basis of sex. They're discriminating on the basis of purpose. If you act for the purpose of carving up minors, that is a bad purpose. But if you act for a different purpose, if you're treating some sort of medical ailment, then that's an okay purpose. And laws, that the point of laws is to target purposes. This is standard behavior. But then the other thing is, to the extent the left is arguing that any law that affects men and women differently, it doesn't discriminate, but somehow, it affects them differently, that's discrimination, then that would just eliminate sex. Because you know what? Laws do affect the sexes differently because the sexes are different. Yeah. We are different. And so if you say that women have access to prenatal care, that doesn't mean you have to give men access. What is a man going to do with prenatal care? If you give men prostate screenings, prostate cancer screenings, do you have to give women that? No. And so that's this crazy idea. I remember
when the Affordable Care Act, there was a big debate over whether or not they should include abortion coverage for men. And I'm like, on what planet is that ever going to be needed? Like, it's just, but you and I can laugh about it, May, because we're normal. Like, we think in kind of determined, common sense, majority ways. But there are those amongst us, and sadly, they are elevated high in the Democratic and far left wings of politics, that will look at us straight in the face and say that we're the ones who are crazy for observing what nature naturally produces.
Exactly. And that's why our brief highlighted women's sports, because if your law can't affect people differently, then you can't have women's sports, because women's sports exist because women are different. We are generally smaller. We're generally less strong. We're generally less fast, like all of these things. And if anyone would like to say that that's false, like how many women are in the NBA? Okay. So laws affect women differently by protecting, by permitting women's sports. And if that's not okay, then there are no women's sports. So that's what we're really highlighting is if you were to accept the left's arguments on this and say, oh, well, these laws, it only lets one sex have estrogen and the other sex, you can't. Yeah. Okay. Laws affect the sexes differently because we are different, and that is okay. What's not okay is discrimination. You cannot take people who are similarly situated when there's no biological difference and just say, I don't like women, we're going to treat you worse. But discrimination requires treating somebody worse because of their sex, not this.
And that's why it's such a common sense issue. That's why people as conservative as Riley Gaines and as probably progressive in a lot of other ways that I would disagree with as Martina Navratilova have come together, because there's such an amazing duh factor on this entire issue, but it is working its way to the courts, and IWF is in the Supreme Court fighting for the cause of common sense, and May Mailman is leading that charge, and May, we're grateful for all that IWF is doing.
Which is iwfeatures.com. Kelsey Bowler actually is leading the charge there. So those are documentaries. Those are really short stories, just so that you know, how is gender identity, gender ideology affecting people in my state, in my community? So iwfeatures.com, if you just want to learn, you just want to watch some videos.
That's
super easy.
That's a great tip. iwfeatures.com. May Mailman, thank you so much.
Great.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. From New York, That Kevin McCullough.
So glad to have you with us. Thank you for being here, Kevin McCullough, on your weekend. I consider it a high privilege to have your company, friends. I do not take it for granted in any way whatsoever. And that's why I'm so grateful when people register to win a mug, or they pick up a phone and they call a legislator and they make a difference on an issue, or as you've been doing in rather remarkable ways in recent days, in helping us liberate the slaves that we have been working on liberating this year. Last week, I asked you if you would take this on as a Christmas challenge. We had a number of slaves that are still left for the year, names of women that are on the list that we have not yet reached. Our goal is 208 individual human slaves liberated from slavery. Our partner, Christian Solidarity International, on the ground in northern Sudan, where the tribal wars have gone on for years, but they have had a lot of success since the Civil War in bringing slaves home that the rest of the world didn't care about. The rest of the world kind of just shoved them off to the side and said, let's declare peace and make sure we get the win. But we're not really worried about the slaves, the girls that were taken into slavery. Well, Christian Solidarity International thinks differently about that, and they have been diligently working on that since the end of the Civil War. And I just want to say, last week, I kind of put it in front of you and said, here's the need going into that week, and we only have until the end of this calendar year to get this done. We still were 63 slaves away. Our family made their gift, and a couple of other people made a gift. And before the weekend was out, an additional 10 slaves had received their liberation. And it's going to be the most amazing Christmas gift for them this year, friends. I cannot express to you the deep gratitude in my heart. So that brings us to a grand total right now of 155 women whose lives we have radically changed. We have taken them from being persecuted, beaten, sworn at, sexually assaulted, physically assaulted in ways you can't even begin to imagine. They practice a thing called female genital mutilation in northern Sudan, in the Muslim areas. And when you own a person as a piece of property, they take it upon themselves to remove the ability for you to sense anything of pleasure during the sexual act. And that way, then the slave masters can rape them as much as they want to and kind of have, consequence-free lives from it. It's pathetic, disgusting stuff. And yet, when we liberate one woman from that situation, she never goes back to it. So it is an amazing thing. It is a wonderful thing. And we have 53 of the 208 women left on the list that we started the year trying to liberate. And I just want to put a challenge out to you right now. We have just received word that every slave we liberate tonight or this weekend. So if you're hearing this on a Saturday night or a Saturday morning or a Sunday night or a Sunday morning, whenever it is through the weekend, every slave that we liberate will be matched by another donor who is very, very concerned about the conditions of these slaves as well. And he wants to challenge us to step up. So my family and I are going to make another donation this weekend just so that we can enact that match. But it's going to be a slave for slave match. And here's how much it costs to liberate one human life. $250. That's it. That takes care of their not only their travel back to South Sudan into safety, where they won't be taken captive and that sort of thing again. If they escape in northern Sudan and the slave master catches them, then they're required to go back. If they make it to South Sudan, where they're from, their home, nobody can bother them there. And this is the amazing thing: the $250 that you give in liberation of a woman is going to give her everything she needs to start her life. It's going to give her a year's worth of food. It's going to give her some items for clothing and for cover. It's going to give her some items to protect her from the weather, tarps and blankets and other things for when it's hot or cold, etc. It's going to give her a year's worth of food, a year's worth of grain to plant the following year's worth of food. It's going to give her utensils to garden, cook, clean, and fish with. And in addition to that, it's going to give her a she-goat that she can use to draw milk. She can use to make cheese. She can use to breed and have additional she-goats and sell those and have a micro-enterprise business for her family. It's going to deliver all of those things in her favor when you step up. And as soon as you give your gift, that next name comes off the list. So as the McCulloughs did last week, we do it by credit card. The minute that gift is processed, that woman is automatically spoken for. And we have another liberation where we're going to go and bring them all back across the line in just a matter of weeks. There's always one just around the corner. But friends, what a better way to usher in the holiday season of Thanksgiving and Christmas than to liberate Christian women from Muslim oppressors who have done nothing but enslave them and treat them horribly. Bring them home for Christmas, give them gifts that they are not expecting. They will be so immensely grateful. They will be brought to tears. They will be joyously crying and dancing and shouting and all the rest of it. And friends, you know that this works because we've done it every year for the last several. In fact, because of your generosity over the last few years, we have now liberated close to 4,800 women from slavery in just the last few years. 4,800 individuals that you and I and our listeners and viewers together came together and said, we're going to put an end to this right now. Here's the phone number, 888-342-1010. If you just want to give your gift online and get it done quickly, just go to bringherhome.org. Bringherhome.org. Bring her, the slave, home to South Sudan.org. Bringherhome.org. Bringherhome.org. Or if you want to talk to a real person, we've got one of those standing by. You can dial 888-342-1010. 888-342-1010. But 155 lives have been changed, transformed, liberated, brought to freedom because of your generosity. And we just have these 53 women to go. I don't want to leave a single one of them behind, friends. Let's get this done so that they all know that they're going home for Christmas this year. So that every last one of them on the list has the confidence, I'm going home. And sometimes, friends, they don't have family to go home to. But the nice thing about Christian Solidarity is that they're already working with the churches and the towns where the girls will go. And even if they can't find family members, they will get to stay with former slaves. And there's a community that helps supports them and keeps them going. 888-342-1010 or bringherhome.org.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.